something unrealistic, understand why they're asking. Don't confront it right there, and don't escalate it, but go off and you know, say, look, we'll look at what we can do, and then come back and have some sort of reasonable response later, right? Usually just like trying to confront these things right away might not be a good idea. Again, remember, if you're trying to undo that feared enforcer perception, then when you're having this conversation with stakeholders about what they want you to do, interjecting in the middle of that conversation, I can't do that, that's going to be counterproductive. Okay, so you get your mission. What's your mission? Now, mission statement, you know, this is the kind of thing that, again, kind of inspires a certain amount of cynicism a lot of times, because this phrase has been overused and used often and attached to meaningless, vapid kind of statements of principles, right? So, I mean, I've seen testing mission statements. Our mission is to support the release of higher quality software. Okay, what exactly does that mean? Do you bring lunch for the developers? Because that would maybe help them be more productive, and you wouldn't want them eating on an empty or programming on an empty stomach. They might make mistakes, right? I mean, see, it's good to support production of higher quality code, but what exactly does that mean, right? We want something actionable here. What specifically are your objectives? How are you going to measure the effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction with which you are delivering on those metrics, on those objectives, right? What's the measure of success? And what are your targets? What are your targets for those metrics? Okay, so let me try to illustrate each one of these here briefly and make sure I don't go over time, start competing with lunch, because that's a speaker mistake by any metric. So effectiveness, let's talk about defect detection, okay? So defect detection effectiveness, what percentage of the defects do you find, right? And what percentage should you find? As I said, I've seen one organization that was able to find 99.5% on a long-term basis, a sustained track there. Okay, that's great. And if you're doing that right now, bravo to you, because you're doing a very good job. Okay? But you're probably not quite there. But that's a good thing to aspire to, right? That's a good metric to have. What percentage of the defects do we find? What are we doing right now? That's your baseline. What are other organizations achieving? That's your benchmark. How do we move towards that? Okay? So that would be effectiveness. Efficiency, in terms of finding defects, you can look at what's your cost per defect found, right? Relative to the cost of a defect found in production. How much money do we save each time we find a defect? What are some smart things we can do to reduce our cost per defect found? Right? Automation be one. Increase your level of automation. Probably help you find defects in a more effective, efficient fashion. Avoid time wasting and effort wasting incidents like trying to test with bad data or trying to test with an improperly configured environment. That'd be something you could do to increase your efficiency. Right? Look at ways of increasing your efficiency that are smart. Because there are stupid ways to increase your efficiency too. Just tell the developers, give me software that has lots of bugs in it. Right? Because if you got really buggy software, it's easy and cheap to find a lot of bugs in it. But notice that if you do that, what's probably going to happen is your defect detection effectiveness is going to go down because you're going to get overwhelmed by the number of defects. Okay? So look for smart ways to optimize these measures. Now, in terms of satisfaction, again, satisfaction matters. So make sure you look at that. You include that as part of how you're measuring yourself. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in my presentation tomorrow, that presentation on measuring testing services. And so the use of surveys to measure satisfaction is something that you'll want to do. And survey your stakeholders about how well you're doing. Now, just to illustrate the importance of this, though, just to make sure that this is clear, I'll use an analogy I've used a few times before. Let's say that you're on your way to work in the morning and you worked late last night and so you're kind of tired and you need some caffeine, okay? So you stop, and for those of you who drink tea, you can just think in terms of getting some tea, coffee, getting cappuccino, whatever it is, okay? You stop for some sort of caffeinated beverage to wake you up. And you go into some store where you can get that, and they've got exactly what you want, okay? And guess what? Exactly what you want is half off today. And they give it to you really quick. So you're in and out, and it was cheaper than you expected. Okay? It was effective and efficient, but are you happy? Maybe, maybe not. Kind of depends, right? Let's suppose that when you went in there, the person that took your order was just totally rude, obviously did not want to see you, did not want you to be there, was not interested in your day at all. Right? And then they take your money and they gave you wrong change, and you had to argue with them about the change and get that fixed. And meanwhile, you look over at the person who's making your drink, and they've got this long hair hanging down. It's not in a net. It's like going into everything, and it looks like maybe they washed their hair like, I don't know, a year or two ago, perhaps. And then meanwhile, out of the corner of your eye, you see something scurrying on the floor. You're not sure exactly what it is, but it's big and ugly. Okay? So now you're going out of there with your drink, looking at it going, ooh, whoa. Okay, it was cheap and it was fast and it was exactly what I wanted, but I don't know if I'm happy, right? See, satisfaction matters, right? When you're in a service industry, satisfaction matters. So we are in the service business and testing. We are providing a service to the wider project. So it matters how people feel about that, how we deliver our services, our information, okay? Now, there is this concept of a test policy document. Now, policy documents, again, get a bad name. They're like mission statements because a lot of people have seen policy documents and they read them and they're like, God, this is completely irrelevant to my life. This is so vapid and meaningless, it could be anything. What I'm talking about here, again, is capturing these specific objectives, metrics, and targets in your policy document. This is what we're going to do for you. This is how we're going to help you. Send that around to your stakeholders. Use that to promote a concrete dialogue about, well, what we can contribute. Okay? Get consensus on that. All right? Be focused on, again, how we help, how we contribute. Okay, so you've got your objectives defined. Okay, now it's nothing to it but to do it, as the saying goes, right? Well, let's walk in the walk. Everything you do should be about achieving those objectives, delivering on what you promised. Otherwise, you're going to seriously damage your credibility. If you go through this exercise that I've discussed of working with your stakeholders, defining the objectives, getting these metrics in place, and then you don't do it, that's probably worse than not having done it at all, right? See what I mean? Don't say that you're going to fix things and then perform. Now, maybe you're focused on achieving your objectives, but your manager is telling you to do things that have nothing to do with your objectives. Oh, why is that? Is there some stakeholder you forgot to talk to? Did you forget to talk to your manager? Did you forget to get your manager's approval of the objectives? Is somebody confused? Because if you've had this kind of holistic conversation about what it is that we're trying to accomplish, people shouldn't really be asking you to do things that aren't related to that. If they're asking you to do something that's not related to that, then guess what? There's a missing objective or something. Something's screwed up. Okay? Now, let's suppose you've got this in place. You're walking the walk, as I say. You're achieving your objectives. Boom, problem solved, right? Well, not necessarily. It takes a while to get over that feared enforcer type of perspective to clean up reputation. I did an assessment for a client once, and I'm reporting to the director of testing on this, and his predecessor, who had left 4 years previous, had this unfortunate policy of setting minimums and targets and so forth to reward testers based on the number of bugs they reported. And their performance evaluations included that. Now, you might think, well, what's wrong with that? Well, here's the problem. The developers knew that that was happening because, generally speaking, there aren't any secrets in terms of how people get rewarded and punished. It becomes pretty transparent in organizations pretty quickly. So developers knew that, and so the developers were like, they'd look at these bug reports going, okay, is this a real bug? Is this just a yearly performance evaluation inflator, right? That was the way they would look at them. They're very, very skeptical about these bug reports that were being filed because they thought, well, maybe they're real bugs or maybe the guy's just filing one because he hasn't in a while and needs to. But when the guy I was working with, the new director of testing came in, and that was one of the first things he did away with because he looked at that and said, that's stupid. That's not a good way of measuring the testers, the number of bugs they file. So he stopped doing that. That had 4 years. But still, the developers, some of the developers I talked to thought that the testers got rewarded for filing bug reports. They would say, oh, well, yeah, we're pretty skeptical about the bug reports. I ask why. Well, because, the testers, they get rewarded for filing bug reports as part of their performance evaluation. I asked the director, and he's like, no, it hasn't been for 4 years, but people still believed it, right? So these kind of things, this reputational damage, it is difficult to fix, okay? So just keep that in mind. It can be a while before you rehabilitate your reputation if you have this feared enforcer reputation. Now, if you don't, and you're going through this process sort of new, then great. Then this should show immediate benefits. Okay, so check in. Check in from time to time. Follow up with your stakeholders. Have a conversation about how are we doing, how's our performance relative to your expectations and so forth. All right. You want to keep that positive relationship going, certainly, and you want to make them feel that you're sticking with it, right? We're still focused on providing good service. So things that I have seen work, certainly regular surveys. Some of the testing teams that we've worked with, consulted with, that I would consider to be the most successful do survey their stakeholders about how they're doing. Now, the surveys have to be well designed. You can't ask too much of people, but it also can't just be this vague, hey, how are we doing? How would you rate our service? Be a little more specific than that, right? Definitely face-to-face communication. Talk to your stakeholders. Doesn't have to be specifically about how are we doing, but create the opportunity for some candid communication with them. We have some clients where the test team puts out some sort of internal newsletter. They have like a wiki page or something that they update with news about how they're doing, keep people informed, what's the latest, and that works. And definitely, with the metrics that you put in place, evaluate how you're doing. Are you achieving success based on your objectives? We have one of our clients that they have their key performance indicators that have been defined through that metrics program. They post them right out there, right on a main wall that anybody walking past testing area will see, here's how we're doing. And it's not just the good news. They'll take ownership of the mistakes too, of the failures. If they miss an objective, they do analysis, they try to figure out why, they make changes to fix it. Okay? So, these would be good practices under any circumstances. Certainly if you are trying to repair damaged, broken relationships, all the more effort will be required here, okay? Okay, so conclusions here before we open it up for some Q&A. It's common to hear about this quality cop, process cop perspective for testing. I know where it came from. It came from Defense Department model, if you will, in the United States, this independent verification and validation concept that was applied to defense contracting, where they would have these independent test groups. And in fact, I remember hearing at one of these conferences that was being held, and it's primarily Department of Defense contractors there, of a test organization that had a sign up in their offices somewhere near where the main manager sat. It said, "We're not happy till you're not happy." So basically defining their job as disappointing or angering their people who are building the thing being tested, right? All right, it's a funny joke, and it's like the other line attributed to Boris Beiser of software isn't released, it escapes. Okay, it's a funny joke. Maybe not to you guys, but I don't know. I laughed the first time I heard it. But, it's not something that you actually want. It's not something that most organizations are actually looking for. So, don't be a quality cop. Don't be a process cop. Unless, really, truly, surely, that's what the organization wants from you. So, personally, I don't think I'd want that job even if the organization wanted me to have that job, because it sounds like a totally thankless job, right? What should you do? I would say focus on what the stakeholders actually want you to do. How can I help? How can I assist in getting better software out there? Quality software on time, on budget. How do I help make that happen? What specifically can testing do to fulfill that objective? So if you don't have the feared enforcer reputation now, cool. Don't go there. If you do, you can still fix it. Either way, wherever you start, whether you are the feared enforcer or just kind of the why is that guy here and what does his team do, okay? What you want to do is be the trusted partner, right? A partner that helps get quality software out on time and in budget. So I would say that's what we should really aspire to as professional testers and as test managers, be seen that way within the organization. Okay, so I think we have a few minutes for Q&A. I believe somebody showed a sign a few minutes ago that said we did. So, questions? Yes, please. Yes, metrics.
Of which the efficiency, effectiveness are kind of quantifiable and measurable.
Yes.
But then the third one, surprisingly, satisfaction, which is a bigger factor. It's more like subjective and also kind of not quantifiable. What do you suggest for measuring that?
Okay, so the question is, you can quantify effectiveness and efficiency easily, but for satisfaction, how would you go about doing that? So again, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, but let me just do a quick demonstration. I'm going to make a statement here, and I want you to react to it, okay? So you have 5 choices to react, all right? 1 is strongly disagree, okay? 2 is disagree. 3 is neutral. 4 is agree, and 5 is strongly agree, okay? And we're going to take something subjective and make it objective. So here's the statement. I like eating chocolate cake. Now, how many of you strongly disagree with that? Put your hand up. Okay, so nobody like strongly dislikes eating chocolate cake. How many people would disagree with the statement, I like chocolate cake? I like eating chocolate cake. Okay, so you don't really like it. You might eat it if somebody, yeah, okay. All right, so we have 3 people there. All right, now how many of you are neutral on this question of chocolate cake? It's like, yeah, you know,